Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Aggelos Mouzakitis, and I help B2B SaaS companies transform themselves into product-led companies. As you might know, part of this transformation almost always is a pricing and packaging restructuring. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I will try to be as concise as possible because keep in mind that this little course could be way longer and way lengthier. But I will make it as short as possible for you to get the gist of it. So why all the hassle of restructuring your pricing? If you have product market fit, chances are you could charge more or way better. 9 out of 10 SaaS companies do leave a lot of money on the table because they don't really have a well-designed pricing and packaging strategy. But it's not only that. Pricing is at first and foremost a vitamin for your whole business. All these metrics that you see here can get very healthy just because you have a pricing and packaging model that fits with your market. Finally, your pricing is part of the product that you offer, guys. And it can be the factor that will actually give you the product market fit that you are seeking for in case you do not yet have it. I'd like to make a few important points first before we go into the actual exercise. Pricing is not a linear exercise. You have to take a lot of factors into consideration in the same time and try to come up with a pricing that seems to be the most appropriate at this point in time. It's not really a step-by-step process. You don't do one and then you do something else and then you do something else. You have to do all the steps together, consider all the factors in the same time in order to make a good decision. Also, there is no perfect pricing. Do not aim for perfection in this exercise. Instead, aim for good design. In this exercise, the actual figures are the least important. Trust me on this, pricing exercise is mostly a growth exercise and less of a financial exercise. So price points, the least important thing in this. So let's start with the 3P hierarchy. Pricing is a ground-up exercise, and your positioning is basically 50% of it. The biggest part of it is something that you are already familiar with. Without a clear and functional and tested positioning, definitely you're not ready to consider a pricing restructuring yet. The reason is very simple. The packages that we will design need to have a package segment fit. We are designing packages for specific segments that resonate with our value. If you do not have these questions clarified yet, we need to do that immediately. The final stage is the actual price point, the very, very final stage. And with all honesty, as I said, is the least important. So let's start with positioning. I have listed here a few very important exercises that very important questions that you need to have answers at. And if you do not, I will briefly explain to you how to find them. The first questions are simple. What is your value proposition in simple words? And how are you delivering it? And for whom? This is the basis of your positioning. The second question, what is your ideal customer profile in ridiculous and simple details? Both these questions are the basis, the epitome of your positioning, and you need to be able to answer them. Now, there are cases that you think you are able to answer them, you think you have the right answers, but in fact you don't. How do you know that you don't? Can you demonstrate a relatively repeatable selling motion to a specific segment of the market? If yes, that is a very good sign. Can you also demonstrate product adoption to a specific segment? That's another very good sign. See, a lot of times we think that we might have product market fit or we might have a clear positioning, but reality basically tells us that, you know what, you might not have. So when you answer these questions, also look at reality. Does reality support your statements? So here's a graph that we have prepared in Growth Sandwich, and it reflects the phenomenon of the value gap, which is very much connected with your positioning, and I need your extra attention on that. 9 out of 10 companies I work with experience problems like high churn or low conversion rate or other problems. And sometimes they think that they need to treat that as an individual problem, when in fact, these are symptoms of a bigger problem that is called the value gap. So what is the value gap? The value gap is the discrepancy between the expected value that your users expect and the actual value that your product is actually delivering. In simple words, what users come for, they don't get it. That might come in lots of different versions. You either oversell and underdeliver, or you undersell and overdeliver. In those two cases, in the first scenario, you would have perhaps a high conversion rate, but then a high onboarding and actual churn. And in the second scenario, you would perhaps have a difficulty into gaining new customers, but you would have a loyal small customer base, but you would struggle to make it bigger. Or in other cases, we just might have a fuzzy positioning. We just might not explain what we do in a way that people understand, which might cause a lot of different problems. Your customers need to have the right expectations of your product before they experience it and then receive what they expected. Otherwise, you will have the symptoms that I explained before. And if you suspect that you have and you are experiencing a value gap, please try to bridge it. But how, right? So here I have listed a few very important steps that you have to take. Most of them, qualitative research. You won't avoid the qualitative research. You need to eat your vegetables here. So speak with your power users. Speak with your ideal users and see who they are. What do they have in common? Then speak with your disappointed users, the users that churned. What do they have in common? What is different between them and your power users? What are the differences that are highlighted? And then speak to your fresh users. Now that you have highlighted the differences between happy users and unhappy users, what do you see in your fresh users? What do you see in your positioning? Does it attract the right people or the wrong people, or all of them? Analyze where their usage gravitates. Do a little bit of crunching of data. So what each segment is actually doing within your product. Can you see and spot any patterns, specific features being used most, or other features that you thought that they were important, not really being used as much? Let your users describe your value in their own words. What do they describe? Is it different from what you actually speak about? Understand your true competition. This is very crucial for our positioning. Lots of companies believe that their true competition is other software. This is rarely the case. Most of us compete with 4 or 5 software that are dominant in the whole world. And in most cases, we don't consider them as competition. Competition is whatever alternative your customers are using to do their job, to do the job to be done, as we are saying. So when you figure out these jobs to be done and you ask them, what are the alternatives that they use to make them reality? Prioritize these jobs to be done. See which are the segments that you can serve more. Which are the jobs to be done that you can serve more? What sort of jobs to be done each segment has? These are very important questions because we will create packages for these specific segments that have specific jobs to be done. Rethink your positioning in a way that matches the expectations and the reality. So expectations need to equal reality, or if not equal, need to be very, very close. Rethink your product if needed to enhance the expectations that you want to, and ultimately bridge the damn value gap. Next comes another important expectations related question. What is it that you want to achieve out of your pricing? Do you want to maximize your margins? Do you want to increase your revenue? Or perhaps do you want to go aggressively for a larger market share? That question narrows down our scope to this exercise, and it's very important. And also, when it comes to ways that you will approach your pricing, the by the book way mentions 3 different approaches: the cost-based approach, the competition-based approach, and the value-driven approach. I teach the value-driven approach, but in a few words, let me share what these are. The cost-based means basically that my product costs X, so I charge a little markup on top to make a profit. Competition-based means my competitors charge X, so I will charge something similar minus or over that, depending on if I'm better or worse. Value-driven means I will deeply understand the value I'm offering and I will charge it. And then the more value I offer, the more I will charge. In theory, these three methods are not complementary. They are competitive with each other. But I don't think they are, to be honest. And why? Because your value-driven pricing, which is the one that we are talking about, needs to respect the other two. A value-driven pricing cannot disrespect the rules of cost-based pricing. You still have to charge something more than what you cost. Also, it definitely cannot disregard what your competitors are charging. So if your value can be experienced, a similar value can be experienced from alternatives that cost 10 times what you charge so far, that needs to be taken into consideration, and it goes back and gives direct feedback into your value-driven pricing. So all approaches need to work together. All approaches need to sort of agree. It's the thought process that we're going to use to reach the conclusion, which is a value-driven approach. Another very important point is in this conversation is your growth stage. If you run an early stage business, your pricing needs to offer basically no risks, no barriers. You want as many people as possible experiencing your product, right? At mid-stage, you're ready to offer and demand a little bit of a riskless, small trade-off of money for value. So you can give your users a little trade-off. So what you need here is a well-designed package. This is the most important thing, with an emphasis on package segment fit. When you are at the growth stage, stakes are way higher. So you need a clear trade-off. And also, you need something else, upselling opportunities. So at this stage, you need a full-scale pricing restructuring. It is absolutely necessary. So keep in mind, at which stage are you? Because another important thing, you need data in order to do a pricing restructuring. I sometimes have companies that reach out to me and ask me to help them with their pricing restructuring. And they are at the very early stage. They haven't even tested their pricing, that pricing that they can imagine themselves. So I'm always like, guys, you need to come in 6 months from now or in 12 months from now, because I don't have data. Just use the best practices. Offer no barriers, offer no risks. That's what you need at this stage. The final thing to consider before we actually jump to the gist is basically, what is your go-to-market strategy? What is it now and what it needs to be in the future? I need you to think of these questions and answer them, not just for the present, but where you want to be in 6 months from now or in 12 months from now. The more you focus, for example, on SMB companies, the more self-serve your product will be, and the more standardized your packages accordingly. And accordingly, your go-to-market will be more towards a product-led. Now, the bigger the customer, the more the hand-holding, and also the more the customization of your packages. So you need to be more on the sales-led side. Where you are and where you want to be is very important market-wise and gives a direct feedback to your pricing. Considering we have done all that, all this mental and research preparation that I have highlighted so far, you should be able to know what are your customer segments, what are their jobs to be done, how important these are for them. And also, you should be able to match up the jobs to be done with a set of features that you already offer, right? So as a result, you will have a first hypothesis. Stick to that. We have hypothesis here. So you need to have a first hypothesis of what features are needed to what customers, right? The result will look something like that. This is a hypothesis. Each customer segment will have a package. Each package will accommodate certain jobs to be done with certain features. The jobs to be done and features can have some, but not a lot of overlap, just a little bit. Otherwise, we might have a cannibalization of your packages. Next, you have to decide what will be the type of your feature packages. There are a lot of types available, and I'm sure you have experienced a lot of them. But what is important is the dimension that your segments are breaking down. Let me explain that. If your research reveals that you have, for example, 3 distinct customer segments with clear differences between them, what differentiates these segments? Is this difference attributed to their category? Then perhaps you need category packages. If your customer segments are relatively similar but different in size, that is the distinct difference between them. That is the factor that differentiates their needs. Then perhaps you need a good, better, best approach. But if you need high customization because you have a lot of distinct customer segments, then perhaps you need modular packages. So it all depends on your customer segmentation. That's why I insist on your positioning. Keep in mind, though, the simpler, the better. You do not want to pick a highly complex package type when it is not needed. So please do your homework very well. Now then comes the crucial question. This is the most important question. Now I need your full attention. If you're looking at another tab, I want your full attention. Look at me. The most important part of this whole exercise is your value metric. You can mess up everything in this exercise, but if you have a successful value metric, it is not a huge deal. According to Product-Led Institute, a value metric is the way that you measure value exchange in your product. If you're selling a pair of shoes, then your value metric is per pair of shoes. And as customers buy more pairs, your business expands. So I'm sure you have experienced a lot of value metrics yourself, such as seats, or transactions, or gigabytes, or even minutes in the phone industry, or definitely some items of value of something. Almost every software company has that. And if you don't, please fix that for yourself. Now, how can we figure out our value metric? It is not obvious, always. Sometimes it is. And if it is, kudos. You have done some good progress, or you are in an industry that has established value metrics. But if it's not obvious and you have a few potential in mind, that's okay. We can crash test all of them. So how can we crash test all of them? We can ask sales and customer support. That would be the first thing. We would present them 2 or 3 different value metrics that we have in mind that perhaps came up out of the research, and we will ask the client-facing people. Trust me on that. In most cases, that ends the conversation. Client-facing people have built a tremendous familiarization and tremendous knowledge into what their customers want, and they should be able to give you very good feedback. Now, there are a lot of other tests that you can do. Does your value metric increase as the actual value for your customers increase? If yes, keep going. Can you easily measure it? Is it easily measurable? That's a very important thing. That's why we have it. If yes, move on. Is it scalable? By scalable, I mean, does it have a cap? Does it stop at some point? If no, then you're good. Is it predictable for you? Can you predict the future with that? The answer should be yes here as well. How your costs scale and how your figures generally look in each different value metric scenario. Do you see any anomalies? I would need you to do some modeling here. Just take your customers, use your value metrics, and model how figures would be with these value metrics. If you see any anomalies, then that is feedback. Also, does it help your sales engine? Do your salespeople think that they will be able to sell more with that? So crash test all of your value metrics, and I'm sure you will find the best one. The next thing, and I'm sure you are already fed up with this exercise, is the pricing structure. Here is the point where things get a little bit complex. I don't know if you have heard about the linear model or the 2 or 3 parts tariff, but I'm sure you have experienced them. The linear model is the easier one. It basically means you get 3 seats, you pay €3 per seat. The 2 parts tariff is very common in SaaS companies. It basically means you pay a base for the platform, and then on top, you pay an extra fee for every unit of value, right? And then we have the 3 parts tariff, which basically says you will pay €2, and with these €2, I will give you 5 units of value. If you need more units of value, you need to pay a little bit extra for each of them. I'm pretty sure you have seen that in the phone industry. All right? This is the next exercise that you have to do. Each different pricing structure has goods and bads. The linear model is a simpler one, but you lose a little bit on predictability, and you sometimes lose a little bit of margin. The 3-part tariff maximizes your value, but it's better for dominant businesses. So again, another factor to consider alongside all the rest that we have discussed so far. Now it's time for action. We have to test our hypothesis. If you have done all this work so far, congratulations. You are ready to start testing the packages that we have designed, the hypothesis that we are testing. Testing might seem familiar to you, as it's very common in tech people and tech companies. But what we need at this stage is a few options to test. We need 2 or 3 different options of packages. Remember, not 2 or 3 packages, 2 or 3 different plans, package plans, okay? So each of them needs to have X amount of packages. What we want to ask in this research is basically that. What is the package that they would use if they would start being customers now? Why? Why would they pick that? Let them share their thought process. Also, include a little Van Westendorp question here. How much would they pay where above that it would be too much? How much would they pay where below that it would seem scammy or low quality? I'll explain to you in the next slide why we need that. So create 2 or 3 versions. Try to ask users, test it internally, ask users through customer interviews, run a survey if needed, and also compare, does the survey and the interviews agree with each other, with the insights? Then test with some real users. The whole point of the testing purpose is to bring these options out and get feedback from actual people. By the end of this testing, I'm pretty sure you will have tremendous feedback, and you will be able not only to pick one of these options, but also improve this option way more. One more slide and I finish. Your price point. As I said, the least important thing. So if your testing process, your interviews, and your surveys included a Van Westendorp question, you should be able to have a graph like that, which is basically a range between the minimum package that they are willing to pay, and the minimum price that your customers are willing to pay, and the maximum price that your customers are willing to pay per package. So that is a very important information, because you can strategically decide that, you know what, I'm going to start low because I want to be very competitive now. And I want to show up and present myself as the most affordable. And then I will increase price when I have the market share. Or you might think, you know what, I'm going to go high because of branding purposes, but I'm going to have a discount strategy that will help me leverage the risk of being more expensive. It is entirely up to you, entirely up to your business strategy. What is the exact price point you will choose? You can always change it later. So that was it from me. Thank you very much. Remember, we will have an upcoming energy crisis. Protect your company. The most important thing you can do for your company at the moment is restructure your pricing. Not spend more on marketing, restructure your pricing. You're leaving money on the table. If you need further help, reach out to me in this email. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Bye.